It has truly been said that pride, lust, and hate are all that blind the spirit's vision. To most, perhaps, these seem put in the wrong order. The visages of hate and lust are often so forbidding to normal men and women, in some forms at least, as to be easily recognized as evil. But is it not upon pride itself that our most noble achievements rest? What becomes of honesty if we cannot be proud of it? What of charity? What of ability to serve the race? What of all the rest of our human virtues? Is it not merely necessary that we make sure we are proud of the right things? When the path of spiritual truth is essayed, when the individual begins the self-evolution that leads in the end beyond the bonds of flesh and even of matter, the problem takes on a different complexion, and pride turns its other face. Its true name in the occult realm is ahamkara, egoism, that binding power that is the basis of individual personality. Personality feeds upon either the esteem of others, or hatred and contempt for others, or both. And the basis of both is pride in its many forms. Pride passes as noble in a world which sees life as a collection of personalities, trading mutual esteem for mutual support. It is not so in that world which sees life as one. In that world, the fortress is seen as a prison, which in the end must be broken down and scattered utterly, before full union with the self is reached. Beyond a certain point on the path, the years that have been spent in defending our self-esteem at every arrow slot may come up from behind and array themselves in a prospect of penal servitude, during which all these walls must be pulled down, through a dreary future that seems to have no end. To the resolute, whose final aim in the last extremity is the benefit of the world, the end of the task of demolition may come sooner than expected. To him whose motive is alloyed, it may never end in this life. The means is uncomplaining servitude in any duty that may present itself, without self-justification under seeming injustice, or thought of revenge under seeming wrong. And it will go on just as long as the task is incomplete. Some respite may be obtained by retreat, the problem thus only to meet us compounded in another future. Pride opposes to us not merely an adamantine strength. It is full of cunning tricks even more difficult to meet. There is even a point where, nothing else left, we become proud of our humility, of our ability to crawl abjectly through mud too slimy for others to endure, our ability, perhaps, to humble ourselves where rigid justice does not require it. A student of Mr. Judge's had written, "My friend had been pondering over the history of a life, a friend's life, studying it, not unkindly, but in relation to universal principles and with fraternal sympathy. He came down along the record of events until he reached the present. Looking out across a river, gazing without sight at what had once been the palace of a tinsel Caesar. There suddenly appeared to him a gray figure, stooping, meditative. Then it waxed clearer, and he saw that the head of the figure was bent over some object held in the hand. It seemed that the whole being, the mind, heart, and soul of this silent spectre, were riveted on this one object. My friend looked more closely to discover what this was. Only a worm, a poor struggling worm transfixed on a pin, writhing in agony. A feeling of disgust at the cruelty of it came over him, and he turned to reproach the torturer, who had not seen him, who had eyes for nothing but the sufferings of the captive worm, regarding it with interested pity and yet with satisfaction. "Why not take it off?" my friend began, but as he turned to speak, he started back in momentary horror. The figure was that of the person whose life history he had been pondering, and the worm, as he now saw, bore a similar likeness, the picture of a mind gloating over its own self-inflicted sufferings. This had been the symbol of that life, the worship of pain, a sublimated form of selfishness that longed for a martyr's crown, but which would welcome the martyrdom for its own sake, even without the crown. A passion for pain which made it seem that to inflict it on others was to confer a benefit rather than a wrong. How could they grow without pain? See how I have grown through pain? A disease, my brothers, a disease of the mind. Think not that breaking bone, that rending flesh and muscle, unites thee to thy silent self. And remember that these vices of the ordinary man pass through a subtle transformation and reappear with changed aspect in the heart of the disciple. This, if not the last problem, is drawing near to it. The striking of the karmic balance means in the end to forsake pain as well as pleasure as a means of personal subsistence. There are men who have sought sensation through pain, so long that the prospect of its ending may seem as much like the end of life as does the end of pleasure to others. If a man have no pride, no interest in himself for himself as a separate being, what indeed can life mean? What does life mean to the wind, the sun, and the rain? Or, let us say, what does it mean to the lover of noble music, listening enthralled to such degree that he has for the time being no cognition of his own identity or circumstance, has become one with the sounding chords? With the emancipated, it is not music or any other noble material experience in which the man is lost, but compassion, universal love. In this, the loss of pride and other personal properties is seen, not as a crippling, but a removal of an excrescence, a morbid growth that never belonged to the spiritual nature of man, however necessary to his experience for the time being. It was the cement required to bind together the form and the passions while these were still needful. The real is self-sustaining and one, needing no evanescent cohesion. Spiritual knowledge includes every action. Inquirers ought to read the Bhagavad Gita. It will give them food for centuries if they read with spiritual eyes at all. Underneath its shell is the living spirit that will light us all. It is the study of adepts. Let no man be unaware that while there is a great joy in this belief, there is also a great sorrow. Being true, being the law, all the great forces are set in motion by the student. He now thinks he has given up ambition and comfort. The ambition and comfort he has given up are those of the lower plane, the mere reflections of the great ambitions and comforts of a larger life. The rays of truth burn up the covers time has placed upon those seeds, and then the seeds begin to sprout and cause new struggles. Do not leave any earnest inquirer in ignorance of this. It has cost others many years and tears of blood to self-learn it. How difficult the path of action is. But he who conquers himself is greater than the conquerors of worlds.